Everybody, welcome to this episode of Coffee with John. Excited to talk to Steve Sallen and Ron Solish with Maddin Hauser. Ron, you are the president and CEO. Steve, you are the CFO. And excited to talk about just your journey and all the great things that your law firm has done through the 100 years that you've been around. I want to start off by talking about, so thank you both so much for being here. I want to start off and talk about, Ron, you've been with the firm 38 years. Steve, you've been with the firm for 42 years. You started out as an intern. You were then the president and CEO up until recently. I don't think we're going to hear a lot of these stories moving forward in today's world, that someone has been somewhere 38 or 42 years, started from intern, moved to CEO. So I really want to start off there, right? So 40
dinosaurs ruled the earth.
Right. So, 42 years ago, you came in as an intern. Did you think that you were going to end up being the CEO? Just talk a little bit about how you showed up back then.
I answered a 3x5 card job advertisement on a bulletin board at the University of Detroit Mercy School of Law. Okay, do 3x5 cards exist anymore? Do they have bulletin boards with job placements?
I actually have some right behind me. I use them, but yes, they do. Yeah.
So, you talk about old school. That was about as old school as you can get. And, I was looking for a job as a lawyer in the summer of 1983. Was I thinking about being the CEO of this or any other law firm? No, I was thinking about, making enough money to buy a car and a house and have a mortgage and, those kinds of things.
Yeah. Ron, how about you? 38 years ago, you joined.
It was a different world, and I'm a U of D law grad myself, and I sent in a resume. At that point in time, we weren't even thinking about long-term careers. We were. I agree with Steve. We were looking for that first job. We were looking for that opportunity, and we were looking to associate with an organization that had a nice reputation.
Yeah.
And, it was a time where we just did what we were told to do. It's a different dynamic now in many respects.
Yeah.
I almost feel like, when law students interview with us now, we're selling ourselves. Back then, that was not the dynamic. It was only us selling ourselves and trying to get a foot in the door, and it was a different dynamic than what we have today.
Ron's right. It was very much more of a seller's market than a buyer's market.
Yeah. And something else that you talked about, and both of you kind of talked in or alluded to it, is it was our first job, just getting our foot in the door. And I remember when I graduated college in 1995, it was kind of the same thing. What's going to be my first job? What's going to be the first? I wasn't thinking, what's 10 years down the road was going to be, or 15 or 20 years. It seems today that kids in college are so worried about the next 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. There's a level of stress that seems to be coming during those years that does almost change the game. There was an innocence, I think, back then where you could be present.
Everybody's always telling people, you got to have a plan. You got to have a 1-year plan, a 3-year plan, a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan. And you got to be evaluating your plans and reevaluating your plans. You got to be updating your plans. Like, just live your life.
Right.
Live your life. Are you happy? Stay where you are. Are you unhappy? Get the hell out.
Yeah.
It's not that hard.
What are your thoughts on that, Ron?
Look, I believe, there were certain things that were great when we came in and did what we did. Quite candidly, I think it's in the world we have now, the consumers, our employees, our attorneys, our young up and comers, quite candidly, I think they're better educated than we were in certain respects. There's nothing wrong with understanding, what your progression is going to be, and demanding accountability from places that they're associating with. And again, what Steve and I came into, we put our heads down. We did what we were told to do. There were no questions. I don't think when I interviewed, I'm not sure I asked what partnership path was. How soon am I going to be a partner? I'm not sure I even would have the gall to ask those types of things back when we were interviewing. Today, that's what the environment and the landscape is all about. And again, I'm not saying it's wrong. It's a different dynamic. And I think students come in, and part of it is our fault. We train them. We demanded that they be more sophisticated. I am far more impressed with the crop of folks that we get walking into our office today, that they're better educated, that they're more sophisticated, that they understand the legal market better than we did when we were doing this. And the tools to do that exist. Steve talked about having a little piece of paper. The internet didn't exist. You couldn't search, you couldn't research about organizations back then. Today, everybody has their entire history. All of the numbers are available for folks, just punching a button on the internet.
Let's talk about, it is amazing, what technology has done and what technology is doing right now. I want to talk about that in a little bit. But I want to talk about some things that have never changed. And if somebody were to go to maddinhauser.com, they'll see right on the homepage, your site is beautiful, by the way. It says national reach, Midwest value, consistent high performance. I want to talk about the word Midwestern value. What does that mean to Maddin Hauser, and what does that mean to your client?
Well, I mean, people always talk about Midwesterners being a little nicer, a little more polite. And so there's an element of that. But, we compete with not only local big law firms, we compete with national big law firms in the sense that, I may be doing a loan or an acquisition on a property where the lender and lender's counsel are from New York or from LA or from Texas or wherever. And you're dealing with the firms down there. And frankly, in the Detroit market, we can do more for less. The people are just as good. The law is the law. But, Michigan has a cost of living and a cost of doing business that is much different than Dallas or New York or Philadelphia. And we take advantage of that. We leverage that.
Yeah.
John, we always talk about, when you come to Maddin Hauser, there is this value proposition that you're going to find engaged, smart, committed individuals that are going to work just as hard as anybody on the East Coast or the West Coast. But you're not going to, you're going to get, I don't want to say it's inexpensive services, because it's not inexpensive, but the value is much greater. If for what they are charging, to pay $2,000 an hour for some associate in New York, that doesn't have the life experience or the business experience that someone here at Maddin Hauser has, it's crazy. And in today's day and age, where you have these large national organizations coming into our marketplace, we think we're uniquely situated to take advantage of that value proposition.
Let me ask you a question. So, Maddin Hauser, you've been around for 100 years. As long as I've known about your firm, which has been for about 25 plus years. It to me, and I live in Michigan. It echoes that Midwestern value you're talking about. I got familiar with your firm because I was in commercial real estate, and Steve Sallen would call a lot of people in our shop, and Steve Sallen would have, we would say, who's having breakfast with Steve Sallen this month? And I'm having breakfast with Steve. It always felt, no matter how big your firm was, it always seemed to feel very one-on-one. Everybody I know at that time and still know today feels very serviced by Maddin Hauser. To me, that's a Midwestern value where people feel really connected to somebody, their attorney specifically, who needs to be in their inner circle. How has Maddin Hauser, how have the two of you as leaders managed to keep that culture intact and growing?
Well, we reinforce that culture literally daily. As you know, we have adopted our 28 fundamentals of who we are in an attempt to be able to replicate our culture on a continuous basis, so that when people come here, they know what they're going to be part of, and if that doesn't suit their personality, they should not come here. And we're looking for like-minded people. I mean, Ron talked about we have good people here. We have conscientious people who really care. We don't want to teach that. We want that to be innate. We want to hire people that are conscientious. We can figure out if they're smart by looking at their transcripts. So we have to drill down on who are they. I'm not sure I'm answering your question.
No, you are. You are.
So John, let me tell you a little story.
Yeah.
And I think back to when I started, and I remember being asked to assist with a closing here in the office. Well, in our old offices. And this was a time where everybody came together, and we must have had 200 stacks of paper all around the table, the conference room floors, and people were going around and signing things. And I was doing that closing with Michael Maddin. And as we were trying to get people out the door and get everything signed, I was standing in the copy room, and Michael Maddin, at that point the CEO of the organization, was making copies to get the closing done. And I would tell you that value, that DNA in the firm, that you're going to do anything that's required to make the deal happen, that the CEO was making copies. It wasn't above him. We didn't have to call a secretary or a legal assistant to start making copies. We were going to do whatever job we had to do to make it happen. And I would tell you, we're the same people. That is, culturally and organizationally, that's what we're all about. There's nothing super special about us. We're just going to do whatever it takes to get the job done.
Yeah.
And we share those type of values with everybody that's here.
Well, I think one of the things that's super special about it is if you can do that for 100 years, that's really special. So if we go back to 1925, when Milton Maddin opened up the downtown office in Detroit, what would he be thinking about the industry of law today when it comes to AI?
That's an unfair question. First of all, I'm the only one. Ron, you never met Milton, did you?
No, but I wore his raincoat. But that's a different
counts.
That's a different I'll tell you, Milt was and I knew him, in maybe I met him maybe a year or two before he passed, and he was like a lawyer's lawyer. I mean, he was scholarly, he was tough, and extremely knowledgeable. And I think what Milton would say about AI is, you expect a machine to do what I do, to have judgment, to know how to take risks for a client, or how to advise of what is an acceptable or an unacceptable risk to a client. I think he would say machines can't do that. Not in 2026, maybe not in 2126, but certainly not in 2026.
Yeah.
So I'll go back to what someone once told me before I even decided I wanted to be a lawyer. But it was during a particularly bad downturn in the economy in the early 80s. You may remember when short-term interest rates were 20 or 21%. And I was really worried about, I'm going to graduate college. What am I going to do? Am I even going to be able to get a job in any field? And my dad set me up with some of his business colleagues, people that he knew in the business world. And I met with a gentleman who, his words ring as true today as they did in 1979. And that is, there is always room in any profession for a good one.
That's a good one.
Learn your craft, do it well, charge a fair price. There will be room to sell your service.
That's a good one. That's a good story. Good stories, both of you. Ron, any thoughts on, as the president?
I may have a different approach than Steve, and I didn't know Milt. However, when I joined, so Milt passed soon before I arrived at the firm. But I'll tell you, the firm at that point had made a leap, and had made that leap while Milt was still here. And that is, we were some of the first folks at a firm our size to adopt, and I'm going to use, you guys may remember, we had Wang computers. And, Milt was willing to adopt something like that, and each generation has had different tools that it's adopted and utilized to enhance the practice of what we were doing. And I remember using that Wang and thinking, this is incredible. It's the best thing we ever had. Then we moved to PCs and cell phones became indispensable. And look, AI is going to, just like those things did, like moving from a Wang to using PCs, to moving to cloud-based computing, to now adopting AI, it still takes smart people. You can't use AI unless you know how to prompt AI.
Correct.
You can't verify that the document you've asked it to create or the brief that you've asked it to draft is correct without having an understanding of the law and the subject matter and making sure that it isn't hallucinating and creating false things. Smart lawyers being able to guide technology is going to be a way of the future. But it doesn't mean that intellect, that ability to understand facts and understand how the law applies to them is going away. We have tools that are just going to make it even more powerful, and we're still going to be part of that. And I think Milt would see that as a path forward.
Yeah, as a tool. 40 years ago, my dad was one of the first dentists of all of his friends to have a fax machine, to get a fax machine. And they said to him, Mark, why would you possibly need a fax machine? At that same time, he built our first computer, a Heathkit computer, which, people thought was just, absolutely pointless, Let's talk about just the, transition of power. Steve, you're the CEO for quite a long time. Why did you decide it was time to, pass it to Ron?
So I did it for 16 years. And there were a lot of reasons to pass the torch, not least of which Ron was ready to receive the torch. Okay. Sometimes when there is a successor in line, if I waited too long, it was going to be time to pass the torch to somebody else. What am I hanging on for? Right. Ron, especially starting at the COVID moment, stepped up, and he was the firm's COVID czar, and really dug into that with both hands and both feet, and took the role very seriously. Helped guide the firm through that period of time in countless ways, little and big. And so, come 2023, 2024, honestly, I'm kind of starting to get tired, right? It's like, I've done this a long time. Have I run out of steam? Have I run out of fresh ideas? And Ron, while as I was running out of steam, Ron was sort of hoarding steam and coming up to steam. And it just seemed like a very, very natural handoff. I mean, I didn't have to turn around and look and see, well, who's back there to flip the ball to? It was like a running ball, right? Yeah. I dropped back, turned around, handed the ball to Ron, and he ran through the hole that was always prepared for him.
Yeah.
And he's been doing a terrific job. And I think, it's probably been as seamless a transition as I think a organization of our size can have.
That's great. What was when you were watching Ron be the COVID czar? Well done, Ron. Those were not easy times, and they were not easy decisions for a lot of people who were in that position. Just watching him as a leader, what was one thing you learned from him?
I learned from Ron. It's strange as it may sound, because I had been at that point the CEO for already, 12 years, maybe 10 to 12 years. I learned push forward. Even if you're not sure, act like you're sure and do it. And I think Ron pushed me. As he was becoming more and more confident in his leadership, he pushed me to even be more confident in my own leadership. So that I think the last couple of years of my leadership were the most productive that I had. And yet it allowed me to be even more focused on the transition.
That's great.
If that makes sense. As I was moving forward at a pace that I never had before, including moving the law firm out of its premises of 38 years, it allowed me to do that and to know that that the rear view mirror, Ron was right there and ready to go.
That's great. And Ron, how about you? That was beautifully said. Ron, how about you? Knowing that this opportunity is about to come, what did you observe in preparation, learn from Steve, and then how did you make it your own?
So I think in many respects, it was a natural growth. I mean, Steve and I first of all, we're very close. I think there's a lot of trust between the two of us. And I thought we were, and to this day, we're both very different in the manner in which we manage. And I think that's what made for an incredible transition and actually working together, because we would take issues and there was debate between the two of us. And anytime we sat together, it was a safe place. It was a wonderful place to grow, to be there, because we could have those discussions, we could have disagreement, and we can come up with strategies and methodologies for moving the firm forward that was essentially a resolution between the two of us. And I learned from Steve that, look, you're not always going to know all of the answers. I've watched Steve work a room with our brother and sister shareholders. He's a great listener. He can digest a lot of opinions, and come out on the other side, really coming up with a strategy that adopts, what the room was all about. And quite candidly, that's at the very heart of, we work on consensus. And Steve, I learned a lot from Steve about finding that consensus.
Yeah. That's also beautifully said. Ron, how were you able to, I think sometimes in succession planning, and when one person takes over for somebody who's been in that seat for some time, finding their voice can maybe be a challenge. Sometimes a company is used to one voice and now they have a new voice. So how were you able to do that?
I truly believe it was just a matter of the timing. I don't think there was anything special in the voice I had. We and have. I think we were looking at different times. I think the firm has gotten to a point where it has different, I don't want to say values, but objectives. We talk about going down this road of having a strategic growth initiative, of being uniquely situated to take the firm into the next 100 years. That's the strategies of today. They weren't the strategies of past years, and we've adopted, different strategies for moving us forward. Did it take a different voice? No, it took recognizing the direction that the firm needed to go. We started this whole discussion about at the beginning of this podcast about talking about the value proposition and the competition that we are experiencing in the market. Those are things we're dealing with today, and it's created an opportunity for me to help move us in a direction that lets us compete, and it's exciting.
That's great. Let's talk about the next 100 years. Steve, you mentioned being conscientious. Ron, you've talked about listening. What if I'm in law school right now? I'm in my third year of law school or about to go to law school. What skill sets do I need today to make it as an attorney the next 100 years?
So I don't think those skills have changed in any way, shape, or form. If you want to be a great attorney, you have to, in your very psyche, the very essence of who you are, you have to be a problem solver. You have to be somebody that wants to help. I have people who we interview all the time, and I ask them, why do you want to be a lawyer? And my parents were lawyers, or I always wanted to stand up in court. What it really is it's folks that want to be fixers. They want to help others. That's what we do all day long. The phone rings and we are trying to put out a fire. The phone rings and we are trying to help somebody resolve an issue. Unless that is built into who you are, you shouldn't be practicing law. Forget whether you did grading contracts or uniform commercial code. If you don't have that gene that says, I want to help others, then you're not ready to practice law. And if you have that, you're going to be an outstanding lawyer.
Yeah, right. You really connect with it on a deep intrinsic level of that is what you find fulfilling.
Correct.
Right. Is being the fixer and helping other people. And I love that you said that. And I was hoping you would say something like that because, technology moves quickly and new technology comes out, but the fundamentals of who you intrinsically are will kind of, will bring out the talents as well. And I think it's important. Well, I used to ask an interview question and I still do sometimes when I do some interviews for clients. But when I was in commercial real estate, I would always ask, On a scale from 1 to 10, how badly do you want to sell investment real estate? And what I found was if the answer wasn't a 10, they didn't make it because they weren't intrinsically connected to the business. And I think that's across the board. Steve, any thoughts?
I ask it a little differently, but it still gets down to the same proposition. And that is, do you want to have a job or do you want to have a career? It's a big difference. A career is a life's pursuit. You're all in. This is important to you. What you do every day is important to you. A job is a job is a job. That's the person who, pulls into the parking spot backwards so they can get the heck out of the parking lot as fast as they possibly can. If that's who you are, you're going to be a mediocre lawyer at best. But if you want to grab the bull by the horns, wrestle it to the ground every single day and come back for more, and continue to learn and continue to grow and continue to help your clients, help people. Sometimes it sounds a little corny. We're not all doing, pro bono criminal defense work, but if you do want to solve the puzzles and understand and come up with solutions to problems and make that a career, that's who's going to be successful. If you're just looking for a paycheck and to get from 9 to 5 or from 8 to 4, those people aren't successful, at least not in the way I would view success.
Yeah.
You got it, John.
Yeah.
I mean, when that call comes in at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock at night or 1 a.m, when somebody's panicking and they need somebody, we should all be aspiring to be what we call the trusted advisor.
Yeah.
That when somebody has a problem, they're going to pick up the phone and they're going to call you. And if you really want to make it in this industry, there's a lot of people that do exactly what Steve and I do. As far as being technicians, I don't think there's a lot of people that, welcome that call from somebody that's looking, you're the first call they're going to make when they're in trouble.
Yeah.
And that's what we want to be.
Yeah, it's a big responsibility. To put a little texture to it, because I think for a listener right now, I think they can always connect to other people's moments to find their moment. And so what was a moment where you intrinsically knew, hey, I want to be an attorney because my talent, I am a fixer, I do want to help, I do want to be a trusted advisor. Do you have a moment that you can point to?
A moment. I don't. For me, it was a bit of an evolution.
Yeah.
At first, I went to law school with very low expectations. My goal was to graduate. It wasn't to get a job in law. It was to graduate. Well, I did a little better than just graduating. I graduated with honors. I got a job with a smallish but very well-respected law firm, which is still the same firm, still at the same place. Sitting day after day after day at the table with, Michael Maddin or Mark Hauser or Richard Roth or Bob Wartell, and they all did things differently but similarly. They all had that same attention to detail, that same level of give a damn. Even if their approach to solving the problem was different, they had the same approach to, the same level of give a damn. And after being steeped in it for, day after day, year after year, it became like, yeah, that's what I want to be. That guy 10 years from now. I want to be the guy, who is advising the client, not doing the research, or do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Graduating to that next level of trust. So for me, it was a gradual process of sort of growing up, figuring it out, and realizing that this was a calling for me. It didn't start out as a calling. I wasn't one of those who always wanted to be a lawyer. I wanted to be a dentist. That was originally, when I was in 6th grade, if you asked me, what are you going to be when you grow up? I said, I'm going to be a dentist.
Yeah.
I didn't become a dentist.
Ron, how about you? That's a great story.
So I would agree with Steve. I don't know that there was any defining moment that led me to want to be a lawyer. I think what occurred to me over time is that I began to be recognized for having pretty decent judgment. And when, many times when clients call you, I got to tell you, early in your career, you're like amazed. Somebody called me on the phone and they respected what I said to them. And that kind of blew me away very early on as I was, starting out as a practitioner. But over time, you realize that the value you bring, it's not just the legal knowledge, but it's your sense of judgment, being able to help clients make good decisions. And that's where I kind of found that, wow, I'm in a profession, I'm in a space where I can bring value. And you can digest a number of facts or situations and make recommendations that get people to the finish line.
It's great.
One of the senior partners of this firm way back when, 35 or more years ago, said to me, when I was feeling a bit intimidated by, these businessmen who would call and ask me questions. And I'm thinking, well, who am I? I mean, I'm just this pisher who's been out of school for a couple of years. What do I know? And he reminded me that, they're calling you and paying you for your judgment and your opinion. It must matter. And he's right. He's right. There are, I may not have had the experience. They'll sort the experience issue, but they want to know, where are the traps? Show me the traps. I'll figure out which traps I'm going to step into and which ones I'm going to step over, but show me the traps.
Yeah. I remember being in commercial real estate. I love all those stories. And I was just pounding the phones and learning the business. And one day, Harold Coolish called me and he asked me my opinion on something. And I went into my manager's office. I said, I got a call. I got my first call today where someone called me and asked me my opinion. My opinion. I remember that, to your point, like it was yesterday. Let me ask you this as we kind of wrap up. I want to talk a little bit about leadership. There's so much technology. There's different types of generations coming in and out of organizations today. We talked a lot about keeping culture intact. How do we lead all the different generations, all the different types of personalities today that are coming in and out of our office? What's the Maddin Hauser way of looking at that?
Well, I'm not sure what the Maddin Hauser way of that is, because Ron and I may have a different approach. But my approach was, and still is, to the extent that I'm still a leader of the firm, to be unapologetically authentic to who I am and what I want to accomplish. If people come into my office and they ask me anything, they're going to get an honest answer. I'm not going to get political on them. I'm not going to sugarcoat to make them feel good. I'm going to tell them the honest to God truth. And I think over the years, I developed a reputation for, I may not like what Steve has to say, but I know he's going to tell me what he truly thinks, and it's going to be from a place of a real desire to help. That was my leadership style, to be who I am, and to go with that, and to be confident. And that, I talked earlier about confidence, and even later in my stint as CEO, Ron helped me even gain even more confidence in what I was doing. But you got to be confident. Doesn't mean you got to be arrogant, but you got to be confident. You got to project that confidence. You got to be honest with people. Don't tell one person one thing and somebody else another thing. It's going to get around. Don't lie. You'll forget what lie you told to who. Be consistent. I tried to be, I have a really lousy short-term memory, as you may know. And but I know this, if I never lie to anybody, I don't have to ever remember what I said, because you can ask me the same question tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I'll give you the same answer, even if I don't remember what I said yesterday, because 2 + 2 today will still equal 4 tomorrow.
Yeah. Well said. How about you, Ron?
So I commend Steve on his authenticity. It's one of the things I've learned from it. Steve is that, you're not guessing anything when you're talking with Steve. Steve is as direct as they come. I would say for me, leadership is, making sure that our relationships aren't merely transactional. And that's hard in a law firm, because we come in here, we're running around, we're trying to take care of clients. And it's important to create spaces where you develop relationships that go beyond merely a transactional relationship. To have an associate come in and my only interaction with them is, when is my matter going to get done? When are you going to deliver this document to me? That is, I would share with you, is as far as my own personal leadership style, is to develop personal relationships with the folks that are surrounded here, and create safe places. I think if you want to lead, people have to feel comfortable. They have to feel that coming into your office or having dialogue with you is a safe place, and they can be honest and sincere and authentic with you, and not at risk. And that's why I say I want my relationships with folks here to be something more than merely transactional, and that we have real relationships.
Yeah, it's great. I loved everything you guys shared today. Quick speed round. If you could have coffee with anyone, living or dead, who would it be and why?
My dad. Miss him a lot. Like to tell him about his family.
Yeah, me too. How about you, Ron?
I would say my grandfather, who, I lost at my wedding, and he'd be proud to see where I've come.
Yeah. I love that. A book that's made a big impact on you.
My dear departed friend Jules Rappaport gave me a book called The E-Myth, or The E-Myth Revisited. And believe it or not, I only read the first half. After I got through the first half, or part one, he said, you don't need to read part two. And I didn't. But that book essentially launched my career as a salesperson in the practice of law.
It's a great book.
It's a great book. And so it was obviously enormously influential, because I didn't even go back. I'll give you one more. I'm gonna give you a second, and that is Miguel Ruiz's book called The Four Agreements, and that's a book where I don't ever read self-help books, but again, Jules Rappaport recommended that book during a particularly low time in my life, and he said, "Here, read this. It'll take you an hour." Well, it took me an hour and a half. It's a very short little book, and it just hit true to me. Like it helped me to validate to myself during a dark time in my life that I'm okay. So I would recommend that to anyone.
I was going to end with a little Jules question, but since you brought Jules up, Jules, we all have in common. Jules was my business coach many years ago. He referred me E-Myth. He referred me The Four Agreements. He also referred me, I'll bring one more up, Brene Brown, and the importance of being vulnerable. And those are all solid, great books. And Jules was the best of the best. So, Ron, how about the book?
So I'm not going to give you Jules' books. I'm going to give, for me, something that impacted me from a life perspective was a book by a series by Isaac Asimov called The Foundation Trilogy. And while there's all kinds of, themes in it, it's really a longitudinal analysis of history and how things, transpire over time. And the themes that we are experiencing today are the themes our parents and our grandparents and our great-great-grandparents experienced. And you look around, and I mean, you raised a bunch of you started, John, by talking about Milt Maddin and what would he think about today? And you think about, I think about Asimov's Foundation trilogy, and again, you see technology, you see history, the same issues that Milt Maddin had to deal with as far as leadership and running a firm and navigating the things we're navigating today. They're no different today than they were back when Milt Maddin was around. And someday when somebody replaces me, whether it's AI or some other tool, they're going to still be dealing with the leadership and holding a firm together and keeping things going. It doesn't change. The more things change, the more they stay the same.
That's a great place to end. Tell everybody who your ideal clients are and all the practice areas and how they can connect with you and Steve and your team.
Steve,
my ideal clients. Well,
or the firm's ideal clients.
The firm, we have many different practice areas, so I don't want to. It would be difficult. I say, to overgeneralize, I would say the ideal client is a client that appreciates the advice and counsel that an attorney gives. I can't tell you how often I think attorneys are disrespected, even by people who are paying them a lot of money. It's a weird cultural thing. I guess it goes back to Shakespeare, right? First thing we do, let's kill all the lawyers. So, I think it's important to work with clients who you enjoy being with, who respect you for what you have to offer, who understand the limitations of what an attorney can do and can't do for them, and that they pay their bills on time.
Good. Good. Ron, anything to add?
Look, I want to work with folks that want to work with us, that look at it, at our relationship and our engagement as a team effort. But I also would point out is we talked about the value proposition, but we have clients that are publicly traded national, international organizations. But we also have that sole proprietor, that single guy doing a job. That's what's exciting about being at Maddin Hauser, is that we have the capacity to serve both ends of the spectrum, large publicly traded organizations to the small business person that's just getting started out. Yeah. And I'm just as excited about both of those, to see somebody taking the risk and getting started.
Well, I'll just add this. Everything can also be found at maddinhauser.com. And I'll end with this. I'm a huge fan of Maddin Hauser, what has been built, what the two of you continue to build, what everybody on the team continues to build. Here is, to the next 100 years. And I love everything that you talked about today. To highlight a couple of things, the importance of being conscientious, the importance of relationships, the importance of culture, and the importance of having a safe place. And then many of the things do not change, and the important things do not change, which is everything that you guys shared today. So can't thank you enough. Appreciate your time and your insights. Congratulations to you both for all your success. And thanks. This was great. I loved it. I really, really appreciate it. You can reach Steve or Ron or anybody at Maddin Hauser at maddinhauser.com. Thanks, fellas.
Thanks so much, John.